Hello everyone, and welcome to Grimshaw Speakers, where we talk careers in IR with practitioners. I'm your host, Carola and today I'm in the studio with Carmen, one of our co-editors. Our guest is Beatriz Buarque, who's currently an LSE100 Fellow, and was a journalist in Brazil for 10 years before she founded an NGO combating the rise of extremist ideologies. She ran it during her master's and her PhD, and today we'll be talking to her about her career changes, what made her decide to start an NGO, and her experience coming from Brazil and studying and working here in the UK. Thank you very much, Beatriz, for coming on the podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. And we're going to start right away. If you want to start us off with our questions, Carmen.
Yeah, sure. So our first question is that we noticed that there are multiple changes in your career path, from a journalist to an NGO founder and then back to academia. So we'd like to start from a straightforward question. Why did you choose journalism as the start of your career?
Okay, so first of all, it's very unusual to make so many changes. And I started journalism. Actually, I decided that I wanted to be a journalist when I was 13 years old. I was very young, but at a very young age, I had already very clear on my mind that I wanted to make an impact on society, that I wanted to use my words to help people, that I wanted to make visible those ones who were invisible to society, and that journalism could be a vehicle for that. So that's why I decided to be a journalist. And then it was very funny because at that age I was studying at the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, in a very poor town. And I was the only one who had this ambition, I'm going to be a journalist. And I was always very ambitious when I was a child. So I was always saying, I'm going to be a journalist and I'm going to work at Globo TV. Globo TV is the main Brazilian TV station. So for those of you who were there with me and my friends, they were always saying, this girl is crazy. Nobody here knows any journalist. Nobody here knows where Globo TV is because it's far. But I always knew deep inside that was where I was supposed to go. And eventually I started working there.
And I know you were a journalist for quite a long time, for about 10 years. So I'm sure you got quite a bit of experience on what that means. You know a lot about what it takes also to be a journalist. What do you think are the most important attributes to have to be a journalist?
I think that the first key attribute is to have a good ear and good eyes. Because a good journalist managed to see things and to capture things through ordinary conversations and transform that into a story. Some of the biggest, one of the biggest stories that I've ever produced started like this. I was once working with hidden camera as an undercover reporter, covering a story about some equipment to diagnose cancer in Brazil, in Rio, that was there getting destroyed because they did not install the equipment, which was a shame because there were only 2 equipment like this in Rio to diagnose the entire population for free. So I managed to record that with the hidden camera, and the story became how can I say it? The story managed to have a great impact because the government eventually decided to take action. And the whole thing about this scandal started in a conversation with my mom, because my mom works in the hospital. And she told me, it's very weird that I see in these packages in the corridor. They're very big. I'm sure there is equipment there, but I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden I said, no, I'm going there to check it out. So I went there, pretended that I was going to visit her, but I was with a hidden camera, and I got it all. So it started with a random conversation. And I think that the other thing that is very important is, and this is something that is very characteristic of the journalistic profession, that I'm trying to get rid of this now, but it's difficult, which is the fact that you never switch off. You are always like paying attention to everything. You are always on alert. You are always like ready to write a story and do something, because this is part of the journalism, the journalist's soul. So yeah, I think these are the two key attributes.
So, moving on from your career in journalism, you founded an NGO called Word Heals the World. So, can you talk about it and maybe your methodology, and also maybe first your reason why you started this NGO after your career in journalism?
While I was working as a journalist, I had the opportunity to move through different departments, to do different things, to learn all sorts of skills. So it was really like a school for life. But then towards the end, I was feeling that I needed something else, because it was 2017 and the terrorist group ISIS was recruiting youngsters from all over the world. And as a mother, I was very worried about that. And as a journalist, I was also even more worried, because I could identify the strategies that they were using for recruitment. And I noticed how like the mainstream media ended up falling prey for that. They were not knowing how to handle the situation. So that's how I applied for a scholarship to do my master's in the UK. I applied for this scholarship. It's a very prestigious one called Chevening. And I prepared for the scholarship as if I was preparing for a war, because it's very competitive. So I had coach sessions, I wrote many things, I conducted research. I was really like into that. It took me 1 year to prepare for that application, for the interviews. In my mind, I had this very solid idea that I needed to learn about it. I needed to learn international relations in order to really use my journalistic skills to do something. So I applied, I've done the application, I was invited for the interview, everything was going okay. And then I received an email telling me that I was on the reserve list. And I was devastated. I was really frustrated, because it took me 1 year to prepare for that. It was something that I really wanted. I could not afford coming here to the UK without the scholarship. So I cried an entire day. And then on the following day, I remember as if it was yesterday, I was having breakfast. And then I thought, look, I'm not going to wait for this scholarship to do something while these mothers are losing their children for this ideology. I am going to set up an NGO. And I'm going to get in contact with my university, establish a partnership with them, and start educating young people, equipping them with skills and knowledge to tackle radicalization. And I'll put them on the forefront of these strategies to prevent radicalization. That's exactly what I've done. I went to my university. They loved the idea. I started working with young people. 1 week later, it took 1 week. 1 week later, I received the news that I got the scholarship. So when I moved to the UK, I've done here the master's at the University of Westminster, the master's in international relations. And while I was doing the master's, Words Hill grew up exponentially, because then I started working also with students from here. I was invited for several international events. We won 2 international prizes. It became well known. And that's the whole story behind Words Hill. So Words Hill ended up acquiring a life of its own. And the methodology that I developed for it is very unique, because whereas we have many organizations working to prevent radicalization, very few of them, they really put young people at the forefront. They tend to only provide, let's produce educational material, let's facilitate workshops. And the whole idea about Words Hill is, okay, let's raise awareness about this with young people and ask them, how do you think we should tackle it? What would you like to do? And provide them with the tools to implement their strategies. So they come up with the idea, they implement the strategy, and they assess the results. So yeah, that's the whole thing about Towards You.
So it's an organization about combating hate speech, extremism, and discrimination, especially on young people.
Yeah, especially targeting young people. Yeah, so young people, especially undergraduate students, they develop strategies to tackle online hate speech and prevent radicalization.
I'm wondering what some of your favorite moments have been when interacting with these people, and also some of your favorite parts of what it means to run an NGO and what it's meant for you, also through your journey after your master's and into your PhD.
So I had the two very strong, touching moments while running the NGO. So the first one was here in the UK when I was coordinating this group of undergraduate students from the University of Westminster. And in order to challenge Islamophobia, especially these prejudice towards the hijab, they decided to produce a short documentary about it with some testimonies from students. And they filmed, they edited, they produced the script. It was wonderful. And then at the end of this, at the end of the premiere, one of the students, who was a boy from Romania, he told me, "Look, now I really understood that I was totally wrong about this. Now I really see that Muslim women, they have agency. They decide to wear the hijab. That is not imposed. And now I understand the whole meaning of it." So that for me was very meaningful, because it was like the proof that it works, because he learned through experience. And the other thing was during the COVID pandemic, because during the COVID pandemic we continued to have some actions, but obviously everything was online. And a group of students decided to set up a sort of online news agency, highlighting positive news. Because during the pandemic, if you opened the newspaper, the websites, they were full of very bad news. It was fear and anxiety all over the place. And then they decided to do this. Let's set up this news agency only to highlight positive things, so positive vibes. So they set up this, and the student who was coordinating this, towards the end of the pandemic, she sent me a message saying that I really would like to thank you for this opportunity, because of Hope News, that was the name of the agency, I did not fall in depression. It really saved me from depression, because it gave me a purpose during the pandemic. So it was very touching. So it was really my passion about Towards You is really about working with young people, inspiring them, and seeing them thrive and lead in change. Yeah. It was the most beautiful thing that I've ever done until now. And unfortunately, I had to pause a bit Towards You during the PhD, because it would be impossible. But now I hope to resume my activities maybe next year. So yeah, it was a very touching and profound experience.
Yeah, it was really satisfying if you could really induce change. Yeah, and so you had your NGO working while studying your master's degree, right? So how did you manage the time management or the workload, and were there any challenges that you dealt with?
Yes, there was a huge challenge, because at that moment I was working really full time. So this means that my personal life was really affected. After my master's, I had a divorce. And during the master's, while I was studying here, my son stayed in Brazil with my mom, so I was not with him. And I was so obsessed about driving change and helping these young people that I ended up getting caught into that and not managing my time wisely. And the main affected person was my son, unfortunately. So after my master's, I I took some time to calm down and start managing my time properly. So yes, it was really a lot.
Yeah, I think that's what Carmen mentioned there. I think is a very good point, and that there's a lot of challenges. I'm sure the fact that you did it during your master's, I think, is just an added challenge. I'm also curious about any other challenges that you faced, or things that maybe were unexpected when you started out. If someone were to maybe start an NGO today, what would be some of your most important advice from your experience?
Okay, so I would give an advice especially for young women setting up NGOs, because that was the biggest challenge that I faced. I deeply regret the amount of time I lost, like going to meet people who I was thinking, oh, we'll do something. I was very naive. But they only wanted to invite me for a dinner or for whatever. They were really not so ever interested in the work that I was doing. But I was very naive at that moment, and I could not capture that. So my advice would be certainly this, like really use your time wisely, only answer calls and only go to events, only go to meetings that you really think will mean something. If they're not going to mean anything, if you are not sure, also trust your guts. If you think that, I don't know is already a no. So yeah, that would be certainly my main advice, because I think that, okay, it's normal to face many challenges. For instance, funding is a big challenge. But I think that women, especially young women, they tend to face much more than men. Yeah.
So it's quantity over quality in terms of looking for partnerships and investors.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So you touched upon the fact that you are doing a PhD, or rather, you have just now completed, I guess, your PhD. You just got your doctorate yesterday, or the news that you're going to be a doctor, which, congratulations, that's really incredible. I wanted to ask you what prompted you to start your PhD. Your main area of research is alt-right movements, and I'm wondering how that fits into your vision for yourself in the future, and why that was a step that you decided to take.
Okay, so this was another unusual step of my professional life. So what happened was I had 1 year to complete the master's in the UK, then I had to come back to Brazil. So I went back to the newsroom. I come back to my previous life there, in the newsroom. But when I arrived there, it was very sad, because I noticed that my heart was no longer there. I wanted to be with students. That was like my call. So my 3 days there in the newsroom, they became a torture. And on the top of that, people in the newsroom, they did not quite understand the impact of my actions. They were not like celebrating that I set up an NGO, that I was invited for some interviews, that we released a very important report about hate crimes in Brazil. So they fired me. And after that, I was invited by UNESCO to present Words You in a conference in India. And there I started to nurture this idea about the PhD, because I thought, okay, now I understood this, but this whole phenomenon about conspiracy theories is another thing, and there is a component of racism and sexism there. I noticed that there was something that deserved to be investigated. So I started applying for a PhD scholarship, applied for 5, only got answer for 1, Manchester, and then once again I applied for the scholarship. I was on the reserve list again. With me, everything is like the things go, they happen, they succeed, but then there is some torture there. It is part of the game. So I was again in the reserve list, and then they told me that I was in the 5th position, which means that I had to pray that 4 people in front of me, they would give up. So I prayed a lot. And I was there, and then the lady who was working for Manchester, she was updating me on the situation. So she was saying, now you're third, now you're second. When I reached second, I said, oh my gosh, I'm so close, please. Also because at that moment I had no job. I was jobless.
Right.
I was jobless. I was divorced. I was again in the house of my parents with my son. So it was really a mess.
Right.
And then finally one day I woke up and there was an email saying that I finally got the scholarship. So yeah, it was a blessing. So then I moved to the UK and I started the PhD. And the PhD was about outright the legitimization of outright conspiracy theories. So how they are performed and circulated as truth across different online spaces, and how it fits in the puzzle of my career life. I think that the PhD is not the last puzzle, but it is one of the fundamental puzzles. Because I really want to be in academia. I want to raise awareness on how our idea of truth is also like, how can I say, underpinned by racist, sexist fantasies, xenophobic fantasies. And I want also to expose how this is linked to capitalism. So everything, these links are clearly established in the thesis. And my ultimate goal now, when I become a professor or something like this, is to really set up a program to bring together scholars and students from the global north and the global south, so they can collaborate together, because only through collaboration we can really decolonize the curriculum. Yeah. We can really challenge discrimination. We can really challenge xenophobia, racism, and even sexism, and move forward. Yeah. So that is my ultimate goal. So it's a fundamental part of the puzzle.
Amazing. That's really fascinating. That's also very inspiring, I think. I'm wondering, you have worked quite extensively in Brazil, and then now you've been living in the UK for quite a few years now. What has been your experience as someone, I guess both ways, in the sense of, you also mentioned when going back to Brazil, there was also almost sort of a culture shock going back. It was definitely part of the job as well. But I'm wondering what your experience was in, what it has meant for you to travel from what you've been mentioning, Global North and Global South, and how those different perspectives have impacted your work as well.
I think that they had different types of impact. So, for instance, from Brazil, I think that I got a lot of the Brazilian resilience, because we are very resilient people. And we are a type of people who, for instance, we face many challenges in life, but we don't succumb to the challenges. We don't say, oh, my life is over. No, we say, okay, you said no, I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back stronger. So Brazilians are like this. And Brazilians are also very happy. Unfortunately, now the problems of the Brazilian culture that I found heaven here in the UK, even though we all still have these problems here, but in a less degree even in Brazil, is sexism. In Brazil, I use it to be viewed as an object, as a piece of meat. I could feel it, the men looking at me like this. When I arrived here in the UK, for the first time in my life, I felt that, so now they value my intelligence. So now they value my skills. And it was very new for me in the academic setting, obviously, not in the civil society, because civil society also had the problem. So that for me was very, very new. So I think that what I've been trying to do is really to incorporate these both sides. So the things that I bring from my culture that are very good, and also these, this appreciation for academic excellence that we have here in the UK. Also this opportunity to engage with different cultures, which I think is brilliant, is beautiful. So yeah, I think these are two things that I'm trying to incorporate.
And I think you mentioned a thing that is so key that I've been thinking about when the whole time while you were speaking is this resilience that you have. And I think it can be very difficult, especially for young people like us, to kind of find that resilience within ourselves. What would you say is the most important thing when trying to find that and trying to push through difficulties and setbacks that happen to all of us in life?
Okay, so I will say something now specifically to the students who are listening to us. I think that are mainly students from LSE.
Yes.
Okay, so if you are a student from LSE and you are listening to us, my advice to you would be, whenever you face these difficulties that will come as part of the game, I would really encourage you to take a few minutes to think about your journey, to think about who you are, to think about your essence, and to think about where you are. You are already at LSE, which is a university that many people would like to be, and they could not afford it. So you already won. You are already like a winner. And also another thing is that life is very, very precious. Very precious. So I know that we live in a society that they want us to do everything all the time, to perform super well, to get the job, to succeed. Yes, but this is only part of the game. What about the things that make us happy? This is really, really important. So I would really encourage you to do this. And another thing is, and this is something that I do very often, when I am very sad, I do two things. When I'm very sad, I take a day off. And I decide, okay, so today I'm going to have a great meal. Today I'm going to the cinema. I'm going to walk in a place that I love. I do something that I love. And then the second thing that I decided to do is I listen to a music that I think that, a song that I think that will really connect myself with my essence. So I think that these are two things that, I don't know, may help you to also connect with yourself. Do something for you. Do something that you like. Do something that gives you pleasure. And later you come back to the problem. Yes, problems we have in life. We won't fix all of them. But so if we manage to do these small things, they may have greater impact later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, since you've been to so many different universities, would you say that in LSE the peer pressure is greater than in other universities, or it's like similar? So like, and how could students deal with the stress?
Carmen, thank you so much for asking this question, because this has been really in my mind for the last weeks, because I'm actually shocked with the level of anxiety faced by my students. I don't think students should face any of these anxiety, and I think that one of the ways that students could use, I think is really important, that students realize that, okay, we are in a very important university. We want to succeed in our career, yes. But I really think that it's important that we have in mind that this is only part of our life. It's an important part, yes. But we will only get a very nice job interview, get a very nice job, if we are in peace with ourselves. So it's totally fine for you to, okay, I have a deadline. Yes, but now I'm not feeling okay. So go out and do something that will make you feel okay. Do something for yourself. Do something that you like. And don't feel guilty about this. And honestly, you will perform much better in your grades if you take some time to do the things that you love. If by doing that, you will calm down, you will relax, you'll feel in peace, then you come and do I think that this is something that we need to talk more, and also to release the pressure on the students. And another thing that I would highlight is I think that we should have more training for staff. So staff could really think about how they can approach students in a more humanized way. Because, for instance, I know that we're doing many things. We have this pressure to attend conference, to write papers, to mark, to design. Yeah, it's a lot. But, for instance, when it comes to emails, I really think that we should not let students wait. I think that LSE is ahead of other universities in terms of these. We have some very good staff in the Eden Center. They provide this training for us. It's very good. But I think that more could be done. They could promote it more. They could engage more members of the staff. Because something that I noticed that every now, some of these workshops, there are mainly the same people. Yeah. So we really need to promote it more, maybe, and change this culture of university to provide a culture of care, a culture in which students really feel that they are heard, they are seen, and above all, that they are appreciated as human beings, not as numbers.
Yeah, so it's a culture that both students and staff should work on together.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
I wanted to end on, you're clearly incredibly passionate about your relationship with students and about what it means to be an educator. And you said, so your plan, or I guess what you would like to do now is to go into academia, right? And be a professor. Is that what it is? Or what do you see for yourself? You mentioned this idea of creating a course or some way to kind of put the students from the Global North and the Global South in conversation.
Yeah.
What else is in your vision for your future for yourself?
I think that this is already a very big deal.
I agree. It's a great idea,
yeah,
I think.
Because now I am much more aware of the importance of our mental health, of the importance of balancing professional and personal life. So that's why I think that for now, for the time being, I want to be a professor, and I want to inspire students to realize that they are already change makers. They are already leaders. So this is my that's why, yes, I'm very passionate about this is my biggest passion in life, besides my son. But because I think there is nothing more beautiful in life than seeing a student thrive, a student succeed, a student realize that, okay, I'm so happy with this, and I'm also happy with myself. I think this is beautiful.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Speak to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for being such a supportive teacher as well.
Oh, thank you. Very kind.
Amazing. And thank all of you for listening to our episode. See you next week.